Thank you all for making it live to this. It's going to be good. Going to be a good one. Always is when we do these group sessions. And, this should be an interesting one because we're going to be really focusing on SP issues. And Marvin is here, and he's going to be leading this with me. And we're gonna talk a little bit about our new coaching program that we're offering, but mainly we're going to be discussing the underlying themes that make it so SP advice can be utilized more effectively in our lives, because too often SP advice is shallow and superficial, and the aim of this group session is to make you see that it doesn't have to be shallow or superficial, and to make you realize that, as I always say, you are the real SP. Well, here on the Eastern Seaboard, it's 5 on the nose. So we're going to get formally started. My name is Tim Grimes. Like I said, my friend Marvin Daniels will be co-hosting this group session with me today. If this is your first time watching one of these or participating live in these group sessions, just want to let you know that at least part of this, if not all of it, is going to be put on YouTube. So if you want to be kept anonymous, that means if you want to talk to us, the best bet is simply to, write in the chat box, right? You can also use a pseudonym as opposed to your real name. And if you're just using audio and not video, and you have a pseudonym or just your first name up there, chances are no one's going to have any idea who the heck you are. And most of the time, I like to quote Neville in this regard. The truth is, no one really cares. That's my way of saying I encourage you to show your face if you want to, and actually talk to Marvin and myself and ask questions live, because you're going to benefit from it, and it's actually not usually a big deal. But just, realize that this is potentially going to be put on YouTube, so use your discretion, do what is right for you. With that disclaimer out of the way, I usually like to start these with a meditation, and I feel like that's very appropriate for what we're about to cover today. What we're about to cover today is so much about self-love. So I was thinking we could do, a relatively short meditation focused on self-love. Just if you've never done a meditation that I've done before, buckle up. No, I'm just kidding. There's really what it comes down to is these are very informal, and it's just all about relaxing. The next 60 to 90 minutes that we spend together, this is a non-judgmental space. This is a supportive space, okay? And what I would suggest you do is allow yourself, at least for the next 90 minutes, to not put any pressure on yourself. Don't be worried about whether you're understanding what Marvin and I are sharing. Don't be judging yourself or comparing yourself to others. Don't, think that you are better than somebody or worse than somebody. Just take in the information and, as they like to say in some of these new age circles, take in the vibe, take in the energy, right? So a way to do that easily is just to let your body relax, especially if you're like sitting down or lying down. But even if you're moving, just let your body relax. You can have your eyes open, you can have them closed, whatever. And let your body just be there. Let your body just be there. You can relax into how your body feels. It's totally fine if your body feels physically a little bit, stressed or agitated. Chances are, as we progress through this over the next couple of minutes, that agitation or stress, if it's there, will start to fade away. But we're not trying to make anything fade away. We're just relaxing into it, okay? Perhaps you feel your feet on the ground or your head on a pillow, and it feels very calm and a very, just chill, neutral way. This is you doing you. You are in charge in the nicest way. And it doesn't matter exactly how your body feels. Likewise, and perhaps even more importantly, all the thoughts running through your head, those are all cool too. You don't have to worry about it. For the next 90 minutes at least, don't worry about the thoughts running through your head. We can let them be there, right? They say, you hear this all the time, like we can just observe them, we can be the observer. That's like what this is. The thoughts are there. And if you look again a little bit later, you realize the thought's gone. Something that might have been really bothering you a day or two ago is now totally non-existent mentally. So we don't have to judge any of it. We can just let it come and let it go over the next 90 minutes and longer if we want. So here we are. Here's our body. Here's our head, our mind. And it's cool. It's cool. We're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. Now, what I'd like you to do, since this is an SP, meaning a specific person or special person or romantic relationship workshop or session that we're going to be having, in this very relaxed, non-judgmental state where like you're just doing you and everything's fine, right? If you want, what I'd like you to do is to think of some relationship related issue you've had or some pain or stress you've had in a relationship. It could be romantic or it could just be a deep friendship or familial relationship, but some relationship issue that has brought you stress. Very gently bring that to mind. You don't have to, again, try hard to do this. Something in all likelihood will pop up sooner than later. If nothing pops up, don't worry about it. If you are a person on this call who has a specific person in mind, a specific relationship that they would like to manifest and it has not manifested, you can bring that to mind. And specifically, don't focus on the thought of it, but bring into focus the feeling of it. Perhaps the fear or the shame or the anxiety of that relationship not having manifested. Or if it's a non-romantic relationship, but an important relationship in your life between you and a family member or you and a friend, wherever there's that stress that comes to mind, just notice very non-judgmentally the way we are just vibing right now and doing this. Just notice where that stress then manifests in the body. Notice where it comes up, and it doesn't have to come up strong, but is it in your stomach area, your chest area, by your heart, in your throat, in your head, your mouth, your back? It could be your legs, your arms might be tingly. Notice you probably have one part of your body there's more intensity there when you think of this stressful relationship than in other parts of your body. And so just allow that feeling, whether it be in your stomach, chest, head, or wherever, allow that to gently be there. Allow that to gently be there. Just very gently focus on that. This is, again, a totally non-judgmental space. We are not trying to do anything with this feeling. We're just noticing it And once we've noticed it, noticed the feeling, wherever it is in the body, you could very gently ask it, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? Let the feeling respond to you. I would suspect for many of you, the feeling has already responded. It's okay if it has not. Just listen. Listen to the feeling. Listen to what it's telling you. And if it's not saying anything, just be there with it in this non-judgmental, relaxed space. You're okay. And you can tell the feeling that the feeling is okay too. You're both okay. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. You take your time with this. If you like, I'm going to keep on talking. And we're going to continue the workshop. But if you feel that you want to just spend a few more minutes just being with this part and just being with each other, you can mute me and just be with these parts. Okay. You could be, the two of you can be together, and then you can come back and unmute me later if you want. Okay. Here. Now I'm going to take a few deep breaths, and you're welcome to do the same. And we will come out of this state, this meditation, and we will do the rest of the workshop in session. Again, no rush, no pressure. Don't listen to me, listen to yourself, okay? Good. So that was our SP workshop. Just kidding. Just, that was the beginning. those of you familiar with these group calls or who have done, some work with me know that we often do that kind of meditation, that type of parts work, which is very similar to, or it basically is internal family systems type of work. And yeah, Marvin and I find it very helpful for SP issues. So that's the kind of thing that one of the things we like to focus on for a lot of folks, at least, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, to help them come to peace with specific person problems. Because you realize that you don't really have any when you get deep like that in a way. Sometimes I don't mean that flippantly. It's just you kind of realize that it's pretty amazing. Marvin, hello. Thank you for coming on.
I guess I was supposed to be here.
You were supposed to be here. Do you have anything you want to say? Marvin and I were talking before we went live just about what we were going to do today. And we decided that we didn't really know what we were going to do, which is the same as usual, because we wanted to, let it flow and take questions. But is there anything that came through to you that you want to talk about right now, Marvin?
No, not off the top of my head. I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank all of you for being here. Super excited to be doing this group call with you guys so you can get a feel of what a future potential group session may look like if you decide to go down that path with Tim and I. And so I welcome all of you. Thank you for being here. Hope you get some great insight from today's session and that you could take with you throughout the rest of your life and your journey, whether you work together with us or whether you work on your own or work with whoever.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, Marvin and I can talk for a long time. We're good at that, but we would love to answer some questions or insights, to hear some thoughts about what people are going through, what that experience, like what that meditation was just like for people, or anything else for that matter. I know when we do these group calls, a lot of time people are hesitant to say anything at first, and then it kind of builds like a snowball and everybody's talking by the end. But I encourage you to just jump right in. No question's a dumb question. And we can talk about some stuff that's on people's mind. As Marvin mentioned, part of our new program is going to be weekly group coaching, private group coaching. So like right now, there's like 20 people on this call. When it's private paid, there's not going to be nearly as many in all likelihood. But we're excited to have that as an option because it's really going to give people a safe and supportive space to do work on their own, and have Marvin and I facilitate it, but also to see their peers and people in similar situations and maybe dissimilar situations processing this information, this manifesting wisdom, this SP advice. And what always strikes me when we do these group calls, whether it's SP related or not, is all the commonalities. We might explain it in different ways or talk about it in different ways, and that can be very jarring and kind of distancing or alienating when we see it on YouTube or read it on Reddit. But when you actually talk to people, and that's why I love when people do show their faces or talk on audio, when you actually hear people or see their face explaining what they're going through, you're like, oh wow, we have a lot more in common than we do that's different about us, and that's one of the powers of group coaching for sure. So here we are, and as usual, Marvin, it's early on and people are just dead quiet. Oh my gosh.
I'll say something.
Oh, all right. Yes, absolutely. Hey, Sheena, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good. Good to see you.
I like what you have to say about the SP thing, about we're our own SP, because I feel like I had to learn that the hard way a little bit, because like 12 years ago, I got the desire to get married and I kind of just eloped with someone, and I feel like now I'm learning, not that it was a mistake necessarily, but just learning that I was coming out of a place of desperation a little bit. And then like how you talk about, people just like kind of like desperate for other people. And that's not a good thing. Anyways, I'm learning more of that now. So I enjoy learning more about this. I don't really want anybody special right now, but I want to learn about loving myself and things like that, because I do fear, not, I don't fear, but a little hesitancy about like falling into that trap again. Like say the time that I do desire to be somebody, I don't want to fall into those same pitfalls of, I don't know, just going for anybody just because they like me. Thinking like, oh God, I better jump on that or I'll never find anybody else or no one will ever love me. Like those things are a problem. So, anyways, I like what you're teaching, and that's all I just wanted to share about that.
Thanks, Sheena. You're, we've talked before. You're not. Same thing's not going to happen to you again. You've done way too much inner work. So yeah, yeah. But it is true that at the same time, like even when we're very well versed and have done a lot of inner work, we will notice patterns, in my experiences at least, that we've had basically our whole life since we were kids, and we are more aware of them and we respond differently and react differently to them, but they're still there. So there is that little sneaky element. It's like, oh, it's like I'm not going to get married or eloped again to like someone that I don't want to be in a relationship with. But there's like at least some of those thoughts still that are like the same,
Yes,
that from like
I
12 years ago
feel
or
it.
whatever. And that's
Yeah,
what can freak us out, because we're like, whoa, have I not changed? Have I not learned anything? But when we
right.
take a deep step, we take a big step back, we realize, no, I mean, come on, like I'm a very different person. I've
Yeah,
learned, I've gotten better. And as you said, I mean, that's the big thing I always like to tell people is like, really, if we're getting sober about this in like a nice way, it's like you're the person you want. You want to be with, most people on this call probably want in some way, the majority of people on this call at least, to be with another person as well. But you're always with yourself. So you got to deal with yourself all the time, whether you're in a relationship with someone else or not. So in my opinion, we should usually look at that first, or always look at that first.
yeah. And what you said about seeing the patterns, it's funny because I had some interactions with some men and I noticed what was going on internally for me. And it did kind of freak me out a little bit because I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like, I feel like in when I relate to a male figure, say who's kind to me or nice to me, it's either I get like a fatherly vibe or like, oh, maybe they like me. And it's just like, whoa, it could be none of those things. But yeah, that's just kind of those feelings that are there that I'm observing. But
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. And that's all you have to do is observe them. And like, what we did, the IFS type stuff helps us observe them more. So like, we're like, why am I having this father thought or this, I don't know, weird thought of like, like about my old boyfriend or something like that, like that's not seemingly constructive. If we just allow the feelings to be there more and get to know them more, often those thoughts, those feelings, I should say, are there for a reason. They're actually trying to protect us, right? Like, I mean, that's the IFS theory, is that like they're actually trying in their own way to protect us, to keep us safe. So by not judging them as being a bad thing, and like the thoughts that they then might produce that seem like old loops that freak us out, if we can like look at it all more maturely, like we said, step back, we can be like, this is just, this is how my body is responding to something, is trying to help me, and I can work with it in a much more productive, loving way now, and not make the same, I don't want to say mistakes, but do the same things I did before, because I know better, and I know my feelings better now. Just because I feel a certain way doesn't mean I have to do a certain thing in the 3D, in the external world. Yeah,
Right. Yep. Exactly.
very powerful. Thank you. Marvin, you have any thoughts about that, what Sheena was talking about?
Yeah, I think kind of towards the end of what you were touching on is goes along with your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Because a lot of people, when they're in that state, and I like to say there's essentially three states or 3 stages rather, not states, but 3 stages of what people go through. And a lot of times that is because they're operating not from the correct side of the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's dictating your fight or flight response. And a lot of people are moving through life in that fight or flight mode, not realizing that that's unhealthy, which is why they wake up and they feel anxiety every day. And this is why what Tim started off the session with, the IFS, that helps regulate and turn on your parasympathetic nervous system and not turn it off, to where you can relax and move through life in this state of essentially knowing. Because what I was referencing a little bit earlier was, to me, there's essentially, you can say, 3 stages maybe of manifesting, when it comes to manifesting a person in particular, right? Stage one to me, and I made a video about this, some of you may have seen it, but stage one to me is the desperation stage. And this is the stage where pretty much everybody, you're either desperate to manifest somebody new, or you're desperate to manifest somebody back. So this is the stage where I call the desperation stage. Then stage number 2 is essentially the realization stage, which is what a lot of you are in currently right now, where you're realizing, oh, wow, what I was doing before isn't going to work. Oh, wow, going to these coaches that just tell me to affirm isn't going to work. Oh, wow, I need to actually do a lot of deeper work than I realized. Oh, wow, this is going to take actually months, probably, if not a year or longer, most likely. This is the stage where I believe a lot of people are in right now, currently, in this awakening of content creation and looking at different people talking about this stuff on YouTube. And this is the second stage, is the realization stage. Then the third stage is basically the truth stage, right? Where now that you've been desperate in the desperation stage of trying to find love or trying to manifest love back, now that you've had the realization of that, now third stage is you're seeking truth. You're on that path of, okay, who am I? What is it that I really want? And once you hit that point, that's how you know you've done the work. But also too, the thing about that is a whole nother, I don't know if you want to use the term demon, a whole nother animal pops up once you finally get what you want, right? So to hearing you just speak, Sheena, you're not going to truly know how much work you've done until you get in that next relationship. That's when all of those dragons that you thought you slayed are going to come knocking on the door. Hey, Sheena, I'm here. Roar. That's when they're going to, so you feel good now. It's easy to feel, and this is the truth that most people don't want to talk about in this community. You feel great right now. And you mentioned having those fears and those doubts of, oh, what if I elope again? What if I find somebody again? And am I going to do that same thing? And like Tim said, that's your ego in a sense trying to protect you, keeping you safe. But you'll never really know how much work you've done until you actually get into that next relationship. And that's going to be the best teacher. And that's going to be your best measuring stick, because it's easy to be single and turn down this or turn down that guy or say, yeah, I'm living. But as soon as you get in that serious committed relationship, that's when those fears that you thought you might have dealt with, that's when they come creeping back up. And I think that's the only way you're going to really be able to tell, is once you have your feet in the game and it's live action. It's no more fake visualizations of living in the end with a person. It's no longer you affirming to yourself. It's real live action.
I just want to say that's so true, and that's kind of like a direct confirmation, because today I had therapy, and I swear to God, she said the same thing you just said about you're never going to know how, if you're going to respond differently or what's going to happen until you're like in the ring. Then you'll see like kind of like how much you've maybe healed or like where you're at. So I
And
like that.
yeah,
It's just like you're not going to know. I think because the ego like wants to be like, how can I avoid this at all cost again? Like I don't want to
and
feel that
yeah,
pain again or whatever.
and you know how part of how you do that is decision making,
Hmm.
right? So when you get to that crossroad and you have to go left or you have to go right, if years past you always went left and you get to this crossroad now in your life and you still go left, you haven't learned the lesson. right? So it's probably going to keep popping back up. That's why you hear those stories of people saying, why does the same thing keep happening to me? Why does the universe keep testing me? Because you keep failing the same test that's popping up in your life until you change that decision. When you make a different decision, that's how you change. If you want to use, Tim and I really don't like using spiritual language, but I mean, we can apply it here. It's applicable. But when you make a different decision, that's what causes people to jump timelines in a sense, right? It's because you made a different decision. So that different decision that you've now made is going to force you to travel a different timeline than the timeline that you were used to traveling. And so that's how you know, okay, I'm different now. Is because I made a different decision this time around compared to the decision I made 10 years ago or whatever the time frame was.
Mhm. Do you have like an example?
So
Of-
I'll put it to you this way. I made a video about this. I don't know, some people in here might have seen it, but an example was me in a situation with my car, right? I had a situation with my car, and I'll give you an example of car. There might be an SP situation in there that I could use too, but the car example was the first one that popped in my head. The car example is one day, this was a few months back. One day I went to the dealer and I needed to get a new tire, right? I went and got my tire looked at. He's like, "Yeah, you need a new tire. Your tire has holes in it and air is leaking. It's not leaking fast, but it's leaking, so you need to get a new tire." And in that moment, I had a decision to make quickly whether I wanted to stay there and just get a new tire for a couple $100, or if I wanted to try to go find somewhere cheaper to get a new tire. In that moment, the old Marv creeped back in and said, "You can go to one of these Mexicans and you can find a used tire for $70 or whatever the number is. Don't stay here and get a brand new tire for 200 or more, whatever." Because one tire for my car, probably if I get the tires that comes with it, it's probably like 400 if I get one tire, just one tire. And so in that moment, old Marv was creeping back up. Like I said, in the middle of the storm, you're in the game.
Yeah.
Old Marv's creeping back up, but then I made a decision right there, and I said, "Marv, what are you worried about? You have the money to get the tire. Why do all this work trying to go to somewhere else and trying to look to save money on a tire when you're here right now and they can take care of it for you? Just do it right now, because future Marv, multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire Marv would just take care of it now. So that's how you need to act and be right now." So in that decision, when I made a decision to stay and get my tire changed, I changed timelines, right? And so I stayed and got my tire changed. And then what happened is maybe a day or so later, the money came back to me out of nowhere that I had spent on that tire. So that was a perfect example of me shifting timelines and thinking and acting as the new person instead of thinking and acting as the old person. Because if I had thought and acted like the old Marv, I would have stayed on that timeline of, oh man, I would have had a poverty mindset. And then I would have still been looking for poverty solutions. And then it continues to perpetuate. And so I think to me, I think that's a great example of shifting.
Yeah, that is a really good example. I like that. Very relatable. Yep. Instead of being like, "Oh, I'm gonna penny pinch," and then you got to do this, and it's actually harder. It's actually making it harder for yourself when you
Yeah,
think in the poverty mindset way. But
yeah.
yeah,
And you're
thank
wasting
you.
time. You're wasting time traveling, calling around, looking for somebody. You're just wasting. So, and time is the most important thing we all have.
Yeah, thank you. That's
Yeah, thank you.
All I would add to that is just that, because I know Marvin agrees with this, the way we just went over that in the great example that Marvin just gave, it makes it sound really dramatic. Often this stuff is, one reason it can be difficult, frankly, is it's very subtle. It's not always like, oh, I'm noticing I could go tire shopping or I cannot. Or like I'm noticing I could go out with this guy who, like, something is off, or I could not. It's sometimes a lot more, or a lot of the time, a lot more subtle and nuanced. So you get these clear tests when you're then in it, right? but there's all these little tests along the way. And like Sheena, like one reason I feel really confident that like things are going to be much better for you than they were in the past in this regard is because you've already received so many confirmations that things have shifted, right? You've already shifted so many timelines, if you want to use that language. You know, you've shifted your, even quote unquote, improved your state already. But it doesn't mean, just like Marvin said, that like when you actually like start going out with a guy you like, that this shit's gonna all of a sudden gonna come up. That still certainly could happen. And sometimes it doesn't. Again, we're giving, this is a big call. This is general advice. This isn't like one-on-one where we're really getting nitty-gritty here. It doesn't always happen like this, but generally speaking, like those 3 stages that Marvin talked about and stuff coming up when you've like figured out a lot of like this SP and manifesting stuff like that, that's really interesting. And it's like, you know, that's why we always say it's like, well, it's one thing to manifest the SP, but then and the problem is you got the other person. Oh man, what do you do now? You know, it's like that's when the real work starts. That's where the real teacher is, you know, forget about Neville or Abraham Hicks or whatever. It's like, it's your partner, you know, which, yeah, brings us to, you know, like why we also always talk about the golden rule and treating others the way you want to treat yourself, you know, want to be treated yourself, and why that's so important. So yeah, thank you, Sheena, for sharing all that. Really, really helpful. I'm going to read, so we had a couple comments in the chat. I have a comment. I don't have an SP, but it's difficult to meet similar people because I'm an introvert with social anxiety. Listening to affirmations makes my anxiety worse. So what I would say to that is, first of all, take a look at some of Marvin and my videos. Don't use it first. This is just my opinion. Obviously, this isn't like, you know, gospel or whatever. Don't listen to affirmations. Don't use affirmations to make you anxious. Any technique that makes you anxious, don't use. Excuse my French, but fuck that. Like, don't, everyone says use this, do this. Don't do any of that. Just do what makes you not feel anxious and makes you feel good. What we have to figure out in this situation is you're introverted. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you become anxious when you're in social situations. So, you know, you can either look at that directly, or you can look at ways to kind of move around that. Like, so how can you meet someone without being in social situations? You know, can it maybe start online and you build a friendship that way, and then you talk and then meet them, you know, as opposed to like going out to a bar or, you know, being at a party with a bunch of friends, and it might be much more socially anxiety inducing. But that's the work. Is like, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert, and social anxiety is something that a ton of people have. And guess what? A ton of people with social anxiety meet great partners, but you have to work through it. And in my opinion, usually work with it to facilitate that happening. But definitely don't do affirmations or any manifesting technique unless it feels good to you, unless it feels aligned with you. There's no need. You just really need, honestly, like 1 or 2 techniques or things you like to do. You don't need to be listening to all these people on YouTube, including Marvin and I, when we talk about all these cool techniques, because they may be cool, but they may not be appropriate. What's appropriate is you, and like what works for you. And that can change. Like the techniques can change, but those underlying principles do not. Any additional thoughts about that, Marvin?
Yeah, I would say that I would, to anybody in here that would think how they are personality wise, I would say definitely get rid of those excuses. I would say get rid of all excuses, because if you really want something, you'll find a way to get it done. And if you don't really want something, then you'll find an excuse. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but I truly stand by that. So being an introvert, you're talking to an introvert. I've been introverted for a very, very long time, many years. I don't like social gatherings. I don't like going out with people. And in my latest video, I talked about how I met my girlfriend from being an introvert, because I used to joke with myself and I used to say, Marv, you're never going to meet anybody because you don't go out. You don't put yourself in those environments. You're not on dating apps. You're not on websites. You're not taking listings from friends, trying to match you up with their friends. You don't do any of that. So how are you going to meet somebody? And you know, I used to joke with myself and saying the only way I'm going to meet somebody is at my gym. because that's where I go and that's where there's women at. So if I don't meet nobody at the gym, I ain't meet nobody nowhere. And it just so happened that that's how it ended up happening is I met her at the gym and it worked out perfectly. And so being an introvert, don't let that stop you, because there's ways and circumstances that being an introvert, you can still potentially, manifest that person for you, whoever that person may be, even as being an introvert. And I'm proof of that.
For sure. That's great advice. And I'm an introvert, by the way, too. And I dislike social gatherings. But as Marvin said, that's no excuse for not doing the work that works for you. And I saw you had that great follow-up comment. Thank you. EFT tapping really works for me, really worked for me. That's great. So that's, for instance, a technique that works for you. And Marvin's talked a lot about tapping. And, if tapping works for you, that's what to use, not affirmations, because SP coaches, quote unquote coaches on YouTube are telling you to use affirmations. No, do what works. Use tapping, use things you like. Comments are filtering in here. Just trying to keep everybody anonymous. Don't want to say names here. Yeah, I had a comment. It helps to isolate the feeling in the body and realize that it's all really within me. Yep, that's kind of like we went over earlier. We have a question here. What about when you think you've healed, but the same situations pop up? What I have to say about that is if you've healed and the same situation pops up, you will react differently. I think that is the barometer. So the same thing can happen, but you react totally differently. I've had this happen in my life so many times, and it's wild. When you think back, a lot of times we don't even realize it, but when we become aware of it, like there were things that used to make me like fly off the cuff or get angry that like I now pretty much like have almost no reaction to. And like when I'm like, man, that's so different. Like when I think about 10, 15, 20 years ago, how I would have responded and how I respond now. So reactivity, I think, is a good indicator of that. Marvin, you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it goes back to my example I said earlier, and making a decision. When those situations pop back up, you have a decision to make. Am I going to go left or am I going to go right? And so you going right instead of going left is you acting as the new person that's unbothered by whatever said event is. And so it's kind of like what we were talking about with Sheena is not being bothered when those situations pop up, but responding differently instead of reacting, because reacting is habitual and what we learn over time, but responding actually takes thought. And so when these types of things happen, you have to teach yourself to respond to them and not react.
Yeah. And that's a manifesting practice in and of itself. And, on my channel, we often talk about the 7-day mental diet. Anybody who wants to work on reactivity, if you try Emmett Fox's 7-day mental diet, we have a playlist on my channel. You will learn a lot about your reactivity if you do a 7-day mental diet, because you'll see how quickly we are to react to things and how we turn the same way over and over again. Doing a mental diet or something to make you pause, to make a different decision, can be a game changer, because that's the thing. If you've really healed and the same stuff keeps on happening, but you're not reacting to it, eventually, probably sooner than you expect, the same thing is not going to be happening. That's what all these law of attraction teachings are pointing at, right? They're saying if you change your reaction to things, if you change your inner state towards outer events, your outer events change as well. But it's not going to always be overnight, which is why it's so stupid when you hear, do this thing and you're going to manifest your SP in 3 days. Because, I've worked with people who've done tremendous work, inner work, and had insights and shifts and healed, but the external results didn't show up in the first month. Anyway, you understand the external, it's more like, I check in with them or I talk to them a year later and they're like, oh yeah, this now happened. And we're both like, oh yeah, of course. But it took a year, not a month, or let alone 3 days or 24 hours. Keep that in mind. Always inner work first. Question, how do I either manifest healing in situations that are also long distance and either manifest the person being physical with me or manifest the best person for me exactly where I am? Well, from a manifesting perspective, to get big picture here, there is no time or distance, right? When we're looking at most of these principles, it's like, Neville liked to quote Pascal. I think it was nearness implies separation. And so like there is no near or far. So long distance, or being physical with somebody, or the best person for who you are, in a way, if we're looking at a big picture, it does come down to like a feeling of what you want and evoking a feeling of what you want. Whether that person is far away or not, you can imagine them touching you right now, for instance, right? And that feeling is there. That's a loaded question because there's all these logistics that we'd have to work out. And there's a lot of advice we could talk about long distance relationships and how to like make those work, and then how to get them so they're not long distance. Is this truly what both people want to be in a long distance relationship? Or is it that one partner wants to be actually, even though they say they want to be with you, wants to be in a long distance relationship and does not want that kind of commitment to being physically with the other person living with them? We see this a lot in the SP community where there's like a lot of long distance stuff, and long distance can work great for the majority of people. Let me just be blunt here, drop a bomb on you. It usually doesn't, guys. There's a reason most people are not in long distance relationships, just to be frank. It can work there, but the majority of the time, there's a reason that people are not in long distance relationships and actually are, living close together or living together. So yeah, I don't know, Marvin, if you want to add to that. I'm just scrolling through the messages here too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm glad you said that, Tim, because Tim and I pride ourselves on being real, and we don't pride ourselves on telling you the fluff that a lot of content creators on YouTube tell you, lie to you guys and get your hopes up. So the facts of the matter are, as like Tim said, that long distance relationships for most people are tough. They can work. That doesn't mean that they don't work. But to answer your question directly, I think Tim said it well. I can't personally give you a solid answer on how to manifest healing in situations that are also long distance, because that's a nuanced answer in my opinion, and it really depends on exactly what took place in that particular relationship. And then from there you can kind of peel back the layers and say, okay, this is what you would have to do most likely, this is what technique, this is how often, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, it all starts with you. I would say that obviously whatever it is it starts with putting yourself first, knowing you're worthy, and then I think all else will fall in place naturally after that. So
yeah, we can always go back to the underlying principles, which is, in fairness to a lot of these people on YouTube giving very cheap advice, they are at least mentioning the underlying principles a lot of the time. They mean well. They're just giving advice that's not going to work sustainably for most people. But they are, if people have read Neville, read Joseph Murphy, if we're doing this kind of law of attraction angle, which again, here's another bomb here, but like, to be blunt, we don't have to use, guys. Like Marvin and I can give you advice where we don't talk about any of this LOA stuff and it's still going to freaking work, just to be frank. A lot of times better than the LOA stuff. But anyway, we can always fall back on these great ideas about how, like, if you react differently to something, you've healed. If you react differently to something, your external reality will slowly or quickly shift. If you follow the golden rule, people are going to treat you better. If you find yourself attractive, some other people are going to start to find you attractive. So we can always fall back on these general principles. When we get into the specifics, that's why, we have this, our coaching program. There's a one-on-one aspect, and there's also, we'll go over this near the end, and there's also group coaching, but it's a small group session. It's different than this. We will be able to get more personal and go over like your specific, long distance situation, for instance, or, what you're going through.
Can you all hear me? I would
Yes.
like to just jump in. So hey Marv.
D?
So I've done like a lot of coaching with Marvin, and it's earlier you mentioned something about like you're not going to be tested until you're in it, right? So something I've always struggled with, and I think I'm getting better at it, is having like holding this belief of me being second best, just because I've been an athlete my whole life. So I think I've naturally just taken on the identity of like, oh, I need to compete against someone else or whatever. And I think recently for me, I am talking to someone, and I spiraled last night where I think I had like an anxiety, like a major anxiety moment. And I'm just trying to not like, I jumped on the call a little bit later on when you were going through the meditation, but it's more so not judging my thoughts and my feelings in those moments, because then I'm like, oh, what if this happens? And it just becomes like a domino effect. So like any advice around that, I think would be great. Just working on healing that anxiety when those things do come to the surface, I guess.
One thing I would say that I'll let Marv talk is that give yourself space. The fact that you recognized it, and like, if you recognize it and you're seeing yourself spiraling, that's tremendous progress.
Mm,
Because it's like, okay, this is happening now, and I'm creating at least some distance, and I'm seeing it happening. I don't like it per se, but here I am. And like, you can do grounding exercises. You can do something like EFT, or like, tapping or breathing exercises. You're an athlete, so you probably are pretty in touch with your body. You can do something physiologically to make it so you feel a little bit better. But when you start spiraling, a big picture, that's nothing to worry about, because you're more aware of it and you're just progressing through it. You're going through it. Doesn't mean it's not going to be painful, but it's not the end of the world. Doesn't mean you're not going to get that relationship. It just means, oh, here comes resistance. Here it is. But the resistance does not define you.
Okay.
And you know that. Even last night, it sounds like you were pretty darn aware of that. That, in my opinion, is good enough. Because I can tell you've worked with Marvin before. Like, this is, again, gratifying, longer term work. It's not like we do one thing and that's it. It's like we're changing how we feel in our self-concept for the rest of our lives, right? Like, and so stuff comes up, whatever, like, am I like, did I scream at somebody? Did I get really out of control? If that happens, I might have to take some external actions. I might have to apologize or whatever. But if I didn't do anything to anyone else, and it's just this feeling, personally, like, over the years, I've gotten a lot better at just letting it be there and like not doing anything special. I know a bunch of techniques, so what? I don't have to do the techniques. I can just be there with it. And that's going to pass.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Tim. I like that. I like a lot of times the action of not doing anything, right? Because I think in those moments, D, a lot of times we think we have to do something, or we think we're doing something wrong. Tim and I had sessions with people this week, last week, and a lot of times we think we're doing something wrong, and why is this feeling coming up? But you're not doing anything wrong. Like Tim likes to say, you're okay as you are. And it's gonna pop up. And when it does pop up, don't necessarily look at that as a sign of, oh shoot, I gotta do something. I gotta affirm, or I gotta, maybe just, I agree, maybe just sitting with it is the answer. Maybe not taking any action is the answer. I think Tim made a great point. Awareness and knowing that this has happened and is happening currently. I think that is great insight for sure. I can't personally, I just think that these moments for most of us are going to happen, and don't be surprised if a month from now it happens again. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh no, it happened. This don't expect it to happen no more. No, that's a lie. I think I can 100% see this happening for yourself or anybody once again in the future at some point. And then you might go 3 months without it happening, 6 months without it happening, and then you might go that 7th month, it might show its face again. You just never know, and that's why having the tools in your arsenal is so important. But I think it's completely normal. I'm not shocked that it happened, and knowing the work that you've done over the past however long we worked together, I have no doubt that this was just one of those, as we always like to talk about, roller coaster moments. And I have no doubt that you will bounce back and be better, because every time you get better and better. So I have no doubt.
Thank you both. I think the one thing that I struggle with is like knowing that it's okay and that it's going to happen again, right? Like, I think in those moments, I judge the thoughts and I just need to work on that. Like, Tim, what you said, like holding space and be like, it's okay that I'm having these thoughts, but it doesn't mean anything kind of thing. So thank you.
Good. Good. I love what Marvin, when he said it's normal. Most of us get this stuff. So what? So what? We got to grow up. I mean, listen, it sucks what's happening. Don't get me wrong, but like, you're okay. You know, you
And
do
please don't think me and Tim, it doesn't happen to us. 'Cause
Yeah,
it
of
happens
course.
it happens to whoever your coach is. It doesn't matter if you coach with me and Tim. Doesn't matter if you coach with somebody with 100,000 subs, 1,000,000 subs. It happens to us all.
Yeah. Yeah. This was a good question. General question, I think will help some people who are watching this recorded too. If our situation stems through childhood attachment trauma that we know of, what steps can we do to reverse it? Obviously, that's a loaded question. I'm sure the person asking that understands that. The answer is a lot, in my opinion. Okay, and the first thing I would say is therapy. If you're aware of it, use therapy and different therapeutic modalities alongside these LOA ideas. That's one reason we did IFS type stuff at the beginning of this. You know, there's all this attachment theory work you can work with a therapist. You can do IFS type work with people. A lot of it though, you know, what's interesting, the language you're saying, like, what steps can we do to reverse it, to reverse the trauma? I don't think we necessarily have to reverse the trauma, but we just have to look at the trauma in a different way. You know, that's like, you know, Marvin connects that with like revision and how Neville uses revision, but it's like this thing that we think was bad, we can look at it as something that taught us something. And again, when we feel effed up because of like the trauma, the feelings, we can get to know the feelings, because chances are the feelings were trying to protect us and still are trying to protect us. And that's why they're coming up this way. So I don't think we try to reverse it. I think we try to come to terms with it, find some peace with it, and ideally, honestly, befriend the trauma. And like, if we do that, that's a game changer, because what scared us before now becomes not a big deal. It's like, you know, for instance, like I used to have anxious feelings, and I'm talking about before I got into these ideas, like more than 10 years ago. And I had all these cool tools to get rid of the anxious feelings quickly, but they would come back, right? Doesn't mean the tools didn't work. They worked very well. I still use a lot of them. But like a lot of those tools, like I talked about in Stop Being Serious, my video series from a long time ago. But I realized when I got into these ideas for a while, not right away, more than 5 years after I got into these ideas, that the stuff I was trying to push away with tools and techniques and, you know, reverse the trauma, I just didn't have to do. I could just come to terms with it being here, and it wasn't necessarily a big deal. And then through the help of therapy, I actually started looking at it seriously for the first time in my adult life when I was in my late 30s. Okay. So like, Marvin and I like coaching people on this because we've effed up and made a lot of mistakes and are continually making mistakes in our life, and like fixing them and help people fix them in their own lives. But like, no one has to look at themselves as flawed or like there's something wrong with you or you're not good enough to manifest another person. That's just not true. And I want to get Marvin's take on this, but I just want to tie this in with the next comment, because it was, you know, Marvin's talking about manifesting his girlfriend at the gym. And this person said, I joke with myself that unless he's dropping on the front of my door, it's not going to happen. That's fine. If you feel confident about that, that's fine. I have to tell you, like, one reason this RSP program will interest some of you is you can have thoughts like that and feel like you're introverted or feel like, you know, there's only one way it's going to happen. And like, if you work with us one-on-one, like we'll blow a lot of that stuff open. You're going to see it's not true. You start to view yourself, if you want, as someone that is desirable. So like, do you go outside? People are going to want to talk to you. You know what I mean? Like it can be like, if you're a shut-in, If you're a shut-in, why do you want to have a partner? If you're a shut-in, all right, we'll have to do the online thing. But the point is, if people do not have a good self-concept of their of how attractive they are, of how loving they are, and of how beautiful they are. And when you start to shift that, which for most of us takes time, but not that much time, right? A lot can be accomplished in months as opposed to years. When you start to shift that, you can meet people in very strange places, like the gym, or like, you know, the postman delivers something, you have to go outside and you start talking to him randomly. You're not thinking about being in a relationship or anything. You're just talking about something that happened down the street earlier that day. And it leads to, oh yeah, that's nice. And the next time you see him again, talk again. And then 3 times after you talk, you're like, oh yeah, you know, would you ever want to maybe get a coffee? And then, you know, 2 years later, you're married and you have a kid. That's how it actually works, guys. It's not, you know, let's do 400 affirmations each day. That's cool. By the way, that technique can be good too. But realizing that like you are a loving, worthy, attractive person, that's what those affirmations are trying to make you get to. It doesn't matter if it's affirmations or something else. What we got to do is get to that point where we realize we're worth it. Of course, somebody wants to be with me. We get there, they tend to show up eventually.
Can I just say something really quickly? I just want to reference when you talked about affirmations before. I too struggled with affirmations for many years, but then I found like artists who make affirmation music, and I personally connect with music. And just throwing that out there, if anyone's interested, like tapping into that, it doesn't seem like work. It just seems like you're just vibing and you're going with the flow. So yeah.
Thank you, Dee. Marvin, any take on just the childhood attachment trauma thing? I mean, I know we pretty much.
I think you said it. I think, like Tim said, identity. Give it a new identity. Oftentimes, when stuff like that happens, our identity becomes that, right? And then we think that that's it because our minds always want a solution. It needs an answer, and so our minds will look for anything for it to be the answer because our egos need answers. Our egos don't want to be guessing and I don't know what it is and it can't be that, it has to be this. So assign it an identity, right? What it is assign it a new identity. You've been telling yourself for so long that this is bad, I have childhood trauma, but like Tim said, embrace it. You know, don't allow that to become your identity. It's like athletes so many times they struggle when they retire because their whole identity has become their career. So when the cheers stop, when the applause stop, when the accolades and the praise and the worship, when all of that goes away, they don't know how to handle it because that became their identity. Your identity is not your trauma. So you have to assign it a new identity and remember that, because just because it gets taken away, something gets taken away doesn't mean that you're taken away, because your trauma is what happened to you. It's not who you are. If you look at your life in totality, it's a piece, it's an event, but it's such a minute event. When you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it might not have felt minute, but in the grand scheme of things, looking back, when you heal, you realize, okay, I made it bigger than it actually was. And that's okay. I'm not saying you're wrong for that, but it'll be a realization that you come to. So yeah, I would just say, like Tim said, give it a new identity, and your trauma is not, it's not who you are. It's just something that happened to you at a point in time, which will ultimately be forgotten about for us all, because we all will perish one day. The people who we love will perish one day, and our memories and the events that happened to us will perish with them after us. So we are all a wrinkle in time that will most likely be forgotten about, unless you're on a Michael Jackson level, somebody like that. You know what I mean? Then, you know, people will probably be talking about you for the next 100 years or so. But even after that, 2,000, 4,000 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about MJ probably. They're going to be talking about the MJ of their day, or whoever that guy is, you know? So ultimately, a lot of the stuff that we're going through, it really means nothing in the grand scheme of things. No matter if you're homeless, no matter if you're, you know, rich, poor, nobody's going to remember. Nobody's going to remember. So just don't make a big deal out of it.
Yeah, that just is a great point. It makes me think of that, again, that Neville quote. I think it's from his lecture, Changing the Feeling of I. I did a small book a number of years ago called The Wealth Mindset, talking about some lectures Neville gave in the early 50s, talking about Jimmy Fuller, specifically, great story about a person who had no money and, you know, became a millionaire. But in changing the feeling of I, Neville has this very profound, you know, statement where he goes, you know, when we get very honest with ourselves, which we can do through doing this type of inner work, this type of meditation and contemplation, because when we get very honest with ourselves, you know, we think of all our problems, all our troubles, all our trauma. He goes, we realize no one really cares. No one really cares. You know, we want, you know, a shoulder to cry on or somebody to hug. But at the end of the day, no one really cares. There's no one to change us but ourselves, not our partner or our parents or our brothers or our sisters or our friends. And he didn't mean this negatively. This is why I love old Nev. And this is what you don't hear that line spoken about that much, but that's much more interesting than everyone as you pushed out, which is kind of like, everybody cares about me, da, da, da. Everybody, you know, this is ego driven. No one really cares is a different way. If no one really cares, you have to care about yourself. And in my experience is if you care about yourself, you're going to care about other people too. You're going to do the right thing. You're going to follow the golden rule and be a good person. So that was a tangent, but seemed appropriate. Marvin, we've got a ton of things as usual have spiraled out of control in the comment section in a good way. We'll try to move through these quickly. If anyone wants to just chime in like the way that Dee just did, you're welcome to do that as well. We had a comment here. I'm having such a hard time letting go. I visualize once at night and then fall asleep. I feel like I let go, but then the next day SP keeps popping up in my head. I find myself fighting with him in my head or hearing an apology. I keep telling myself to stop thinking about it, that it's done, but so hard and I feel like it's driving me crazy. I end up yelling at myself to stop the bullshit. I don't mean to laugh at you. I'm just laughing because that's such a common situation and I hear you. And it's funny when we look at it that way, you know, it's good to yell at yourself to stop the bullshit. That's very effective, it sounds like. This comment, I mean, gosh, there's a lot to it. We don't have time to dive deep. If you want to contact Marvin and myself, fill out, we're going to put our SP questionnaire in the description here, or you can go to our website or, you know, the info at Radical Counselor email and contact us. And we can have a consultation where we go over this because we have to go deeper to answer all that. But don't let this stuff drive you crazy. Because it sounds like these LOA ideas are driving you crazy. You're having a hard time letting go. You're visualizing and you're feeling like you're doing something wrong because your SP's popping in your head. You know, you're fighting, you know, all this inner talk that's bad. And finally you just scream it out or yell it out. Don't worry about it. Like I said, and, you know, Marvin, I always say this, like we can drop all of this SP theory and we can just, you know, we can work on you getting a good partner that you deserve. You do not have to let go. First of all, okay, I love letting go. You don't have to let go. You definitely do not have to visualize before you go to sleep. You don't have to be worried about what you're saying or not saying to your SP during the day. You don't have to you don't have to be micromanaging your life like that. Anyway, contact Marvin and I, and we'll give you a consultation if you think that would help, because I know I'm being kind of moving through that quickly. Any quick thoughts about that comment there, Marv?
No, just like you said, let it go and take a break. I think one of the best things some of you guys could do is not do any techniques for a period of time and just come back to sanity. So yeah.
There's a comment that's going to come in a little bit. I'm going to just read this comment and I'll go back to the previous two comments because it's relevant. This person says, it sounds like trying LOA stuff. It just is a net negative to mental health and encourages unhealthy thinking patterns. I think that's kind of like what we just touched upon here. You know, it's like unnecessary, unhealthy thinking patterns. I find it hard to believe in it when it seems like the actual thing that makes things even remotely possible is just working on your own issues and trying to heal and grow and become comfortable with yourself and the present moment. Very interesting comment. You know, I would agree with most of that for sure. I just think we don't have to look at it in such a black and white way. We definitely do not need LOA to manifest a partner or to manifest great things in our life. We don't need to know about Neville or Abraham Hicks or any of this stuff, and we can still do it. That said, in both Marvin and my opinion, and a lot of people on this call, why not utilize it if you know how? Okay. The problem is people don't know how. I don't mean to say that the person who did that previous comment about letting go doesn't know how, because in many ways it sounds like they do know how. They know how to visualize and do several things. But when I say you don't know how, you don't know how to make it work for you where you feel good doing it. If you don't feel good doing LOA exercises, it's a net negative. Don't do them. There are other ways to get a partner. We can help you do that. If you don't want to work with us or can't afford it, you can start reading psychology and relationship books or watch people on YouTube talking about it. Most people giving, like psychologists and therapists giving relationship online guys, are better than any law of assumption YouTuber you see talking about relationships. Just FYI, again, another truth bomb. Marv and I try to combine all this stuff in a holistic way because we love the LOA stuff, but you don't need it to get a partner. Any thoughts on that, Marv? Sorry, I'm speaking
No, it's okay.
fast.
It's okay. Just get, I would say, get rid of the fear of, if you don't do techniques, then you're going to lose your manifestation, or you're going to lose your person, because it's not true. So just like I was kind of saying before, the best thing some of you guys could do is just stop and don't do anything, or figure out what works best for you. But don't worry about to this person. Don't worry about if you're visualizing at night and whatever's happening and everything and all that type of stuff. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, we can iron it out probably in a consultation. Some of that stuff for sure. Quick question: how do I deal with longing for someone when I'm trying to focus on myself? I could dedicate the entirety of the day doing things that make me feel fulfilled, but there's still a lingering feeling in my chest that makes me sigh. It is a physical feeling, like a pressure. So what I would say is get to know the feeling, like we started to do during that IFS type of meditation at the beginning of this, if you were there for that. Otherwise, you can watch the replay. Get to know that lingering feeling in your chest, and do more things that make you feel fulfilled during the day. That's great. Do a lot of that stuff. And you can also get to know that feeling and start to befriend that feeling. Thoughts, Marv?
No, I think that's perfect.
We're moving ridiculously fast now. Sheena was wondering, had a follow-up question, or I don't know if it's a follow-up question, but do you think parental relationships can affect someone's SP relationships throughout their life? Of course, for sure. Definitely. I mean, childhood relationships, childhood trauma, we all have it. A lot of it's not explicit trauma, but micro trauma. We've all gone through stuff that shapes how we look at relationships and romantic relationships for the rest of our lives. How our mothers and fathers, or stepfathers, stepmothers, how they all, reacted, and their behavior, and we modeled that for good or bad. Even if because Marv and I work with people who are like, well, I didn't want to be like my mom. I didn't want to be like my dad. But then you were modeling behavior not to be like them. So that's a direct effect too, So it's like, we can look at all of it. We can look at all of it gently. And again, these feelings are not something we have to run away from, but can look at more non-judgmentally with more compassion, and we can learn from them and heal our relationship with ourselves and with other people.
Yeah, I think that's real quick. I think that's spot on. And I always say this: you can tell somebody has trauma. You can tell when somebody was most likely raised by a single parent. You can tell when a man is most likely raised by a single mother, or you can tell when a woman has been raised without her father in her life. Like a lot of these things, when you pay attention, you can just tell, because you'll tend to see a man may exude more feminine qualities if he wasn't around male figures in his life and that type of stuff. And this is the type of stuff that Tim and I dig into when you work with us one-on-one, is we help you identify these types of things, because most coaches on YouTube, they don't get this deep with this type of stuff and helping you realize the masculine and feminine dynamic when it comes to relationships, and why your relationships have been a certain way for a very long time in your life. Because if you have been a masculine person, 9 times out of 10, you've attracted a feminine partner. And this doesn't matter. It's just heterosexual or homosexual relationships, lesbian relationships. That energy of feminine masculine dynamic is always there. So if you've been a person and you've been wondering why you are attracting feminine partners, it's because you've probably been in your masculine. And it could be because, like this person said, maybe your father wasn't around and your mother took on that masculine role and she raised you to be that way. And now you only attract feminine men. And you don't want to attract feminine men anymore. You want to attract masculine men. And so this stuff goes deep. And this is the kind of stuff that Tim and I address in working in group coaching, or maybe more so one-on-one stuff. potentially with you. So yeah, I think that parental stuff and relationships absolutely 100% affects that stuff going forward for pretty much most people.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Let's talk a little bit because it's getting late. Let's talk a little bit about this program and some of the options. First of all, I have a feeling, because nothing went totally haywire, that we're just going to put this whole thing on YouTube, so people can watch it again. We have a questionnaire that we would like you to fill out if you are interested in working with us. We'll put that in the description and probably in the comments. You can also email us as well if you have questions, info@radicalcounselor.com. And Marvin, you're what? I want to make sure I get it right. What's the best email for you?
mdaniels730
At yahoo.com. Yeah. But the best thing to do is probably to fill out the questionnaire, and then we will contact you. And if you want a free consultation with us, we can get a better sense of what you're looking for in terms of coaching and whether we can be a help or not. Really quickly, I just want to run through, and Marvin, you can chime in at any time, kind of what we're offering. It's kind of like tiers. There's one tier that is incredibly immersive and very expensive, which is basically like you can talk to Marvin and I 24/7, 365, texting, calling, Zoom, FaceTime, as much as you need. That is for somebody who wants to do a lot of inner work and really get into it with us. And if you do that, you're going to see, in all likelihood, substantive changes faster, obviously. That's the first tier. Most people watching this live or recorded probably are not going to be doing that tier. The second tier is you meet with Marvin and I twice a month for about 45 minutes. And we have, we have a Zoom call with you or a FaceTime with you. And you also are part of this group coaching, which is the third tier. The third tier is just group coaching. Group coaching is once a week. And the sessions are recorded if you can't make it live. And they're going to be small sessions, smaller than this, more private, intimate, obviously not posted anywhere except for, people in the group to watch again. And so, yeah, those second two tiers are probably what are going to appeal to people on this call, I would imagine. The second tier, where you meet with us twice a month and have group coaching, is $495 a month. The tier where you just have group coaching is $250 a month. And like I said, we are very happy to offer you, a free, no pressure consultation if you fill out the questionnaire to see if any of these tiers work for you or not. And if they don't, to perhaps guide you to what could work for you. Did I miss anything essential there, Marvin, with that overview?
No, I don't think so.
If people have questions, they can obviously, email us, but that's like a quick rundown of the programs we're offering right now for this SP thing. Prices are in US dollars. Yes. Yeah. Very good question. And yeah, I saw that. We're going to try to get to these previous comments if we have time too. I just want to make sure I got that information out there. But yeah, people can ask questions if they have it. How much is the first tier? So the first tier, how much the first tier costs is going to depend on your situation. Marvin and I will speak to people interested in the first tier for probably a couple hours to get a sense of what you need. It's going to be different if you need to speak to us once or twice a week, as opposed to, it's going to be different price-wise, as opposed to text with us and be speaking to us all the time. So that tier one, the pricing is case specific. Tier two is $495 for everybody. Tier three is $250 for everybody. Good question. Again, what's the difference between the first tier and the second tier? So, the first tier. So the first tier is extremely immersive. You're getting coached by us all the time, like all the time, if you want that. The second tier, you meet with us twice a month for 45 minutes. So it's vastly different. And you also get the weekly group coaching. The first tier gets the weekly group coaching too. The first tier gets everything. The first tier, if needed, Marvin and I will fly out and meet with you a few times a year. Seriously.
I was gonna mention that.
No, seriously. No, I mean, it's the first tier is totally, just to be blunt, first tier is entirely different than tier 2 and tier 3. And it's not for most people watching this, just to be, honest. Tier 3 is just group coaching. Tier 2 is group coaching plus you meet with us twice a month for 45 minutes each time. These are all good questions. Anyone else can chime in too. I was going to quickly cover this. I guess my whole thing with this stuff is I struggle believing. Like if a specific person is not possible or unhealthy, then why bother? No, I think I have black and white thinking because I've personally witnessed myself spiral slowly when I found out about it. I don't know, maybe it's fear of resistance based on my specific situation. I've tried to step back and focus on therapy, but at the same time, it just feels like I have to give up this hope of reconnection or reunion because I don't know if I'm behaving unhealthily. Yeah, I mean, that's just something to look at honestly. This is another truth bomb. Reconnection obviously can happen. It can be really good, but Marvin and I both find that a lot more of the time than people expect, they actually do not want to reconnect with their partner. They're looking for a better relationship. And they've projected onto that search, well, my partner is the only one that could possibly work. And this is a bitter pill. I said this in the video the other day. This is a bitter pill because very often you love that person. And part of you, a childhood part, perhaps really still wants them in your life. And it's a bitter pill when you realize I love this person perhaps still. Part of me still wants to be with them. And this is not the right person. Or correspondingly, I want to be with them. I've told them my feelings and how I feel about them and I love them and they still don't want to be with me. If that's the case, it's probably time to move on. And if you are, mature and look at things in the way we've been talking about during this call and do work on yourself, you will find that a better partner will likely show up than the one we're no longer with. But that's the work.
Yeah, I would say real quick that first of all, Tim said therapy and stuff is good. I agree, but you also have to be careful about therapy nowadays because some people have an agenda.
Of course,
some people are definitely pushing out. I've seen therapists, quote unquote therapists, woke quote unquote therapists on TikTok and on the internet. So you have to be very careful about that as well when going to therapy because some people are just promoting nonsense in therapy as well. I mean, it's not just.
Oh yeah, that goes without saying. Yeah, guys. I mean, Marvin and I are skeptical about everything.
It's not just YouTubers talking about law of attraction, law of assumption stuff. It's even in the therapy world as well.
A lot of bad therapists out there. That's why I didn't go to therapy till I was in my late 30s. That's the other side of that story.
But to answer your question even more, let's see what you said. Is the host? You struggle with believing it. Like, is it not possible or unhealthy? No, it's not that. It's not that it's not possible. It's not that it's unhealthy. It's how you're going about it is unhealthy, most likely. How a lot of people are going about it is what's making it unhealthy. It is possible to manifest a specific person because I've done it, right? Tim has done it. It's possible to get somebody new, get somebody old. That's possible. But what's unhealthy is the way most people are going about it. And I can definitely see you being black and white in your thinking because if you're a black and white type of thinker, manifestation isn't for you. A lot of times, because I call it God's gray area. Manifestation, you have to get comfortable in the gray areas of life if you want to be successful at anything, whatever it is, relationships, building a business. You have to get comfortable with the gray areas because life isn't black and white like people try to make it out to be. And so what I've found in working with people, and Tim probably agrees, people who are black and white in their thinking, they struggle tremendously with understanding manifestation because the gray areas scare the shit out of people, to be frank. They don't know how to act in the gray areas. But if you want to be successful, you have to get comfortable in the gray areas of life and make it your home and identify with it. Like Tim said earlier, identify with that. Embrace the gray areas. Don't look at life as just having to be simply black and simply be white.
Yeah, we still might call our new website or our Instagram page Black and White SP Coaching. We're all about the gray. I mean, we should, our next video about this SP stuff should be about just about that, how you have to be totally comfortable in the gray, especially in human relationships. It's so non-black and white, very rational thinkers. You got to figure out how to make yourself comfortable. You got to make that black and white thinking that you have, because all of us have black and white thinking to some degree. You have to make it work for you, because most of these concepts, as Marvin has brilliantly said, are very murky. There's that movie, I always love this line, like Christian Bale says, I think it's in like American Hustler, some random movie, but like they're talking about something, it's like, it's very, very gray, and like I always remember that, because that's life a lot of the time, people aren't good or bad. It's not like you made the right decision or wrong decision, or, this is the right person or wrong person, or, it's not at all like that. Relationships are not at all like that. And like, you look at families and like, it's really interesting. Families so often are so different, and like they don't see each other for years, or they're always fighting, but for some reason they always stay together, or like they all get to, and it's like, why is that? And that's because this stuff is gray as fuck a lot of the time, guys. Like you really have to embrace that and kind of like just go through that. And that's being in a relationship, because believe me, it doesn't get easier when you get into a relationship. It gets more gray in terms of dealing with like there's things I want to tell my wife that I don't tell her right away, because I don't want to upset her, even though like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I had every right to tell her that, but I'm glad I didn't. You understand? It's extremely nuanced. That's the word we always use, so yeah. A quick question here. I just don't want to lose it. I know we're wrapping up here. Oh yeah, the other thing I want to mention too, I didn't mention this yet, I don't think. We're starting the group coaching, the tier 3, which tier 2 and tier 1 are part of. We're starting the group coaching next Tuesday at this time, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday. We are gonna, as this goes forward, we're gonna do different times. So if you can't make it live to 5 on Tuesday, it's not always gonna be 5 on Tuesday. We're going to figure out who's currently in the group and like what times are best for them to have the call. But yeah, we're going to have a 60 to 90 minute call next Tuesday, and we're planning on once a week going forward. We're really excited about it. It's going to be small. It's going to be a place where people can go deep and get to know each other. And it's going to be like this call, except we don't have to worry that it's on YouTube. So you don't have to worry about, you can talk about what you're going through, and you're going to get a lot of support. This was
real quick.
Yeah.
Then before you answer this last question, also too, guys, know that whatever these prices are, they will be raised in the future. Just a heads up. So if you do want to get in, I would strongly suggest getting in now, because they will 100% go up in the future.
They ain't going down. Let's put it that way. They're never going down.
This is actually a steal at what Tim and I are offering at this price compared to what other people are offering. It's 100% a steal.
Yeah, it's we came up with the lowest price we were comfortable with, and it took some thinking, because yeah, it's a very, very, very good price. This is the question I just wanted us to touch upon quickly. What do we do when manifesting an SP ruined the natural unfolding of a relationship? I had a good thing going with someone, but my attempts to manifest it out of a sense of control messed up the connection. Is it best to just let it go? Marvin, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So let me see. I had a good thing going with someone, but attempts to manifest it out of sense of control messed up the connection. I think this is, as Tim knows, a lot of people do this. A lot of people, I always say we are our biggest enemy, and we do it out of fear of loss. We get in our own way when we are trying to make anything happen, whether it's a relationship or business, or we tend to always get in our own way, and it's out of fear, it's out of the need to control. And so I think that if you can get rid of that, I mean, obviously the first step to recovering anything is admit you were wrong about something. So, admit that you were wrong and then get better with it. I wouldn't say that it ruined a natural unfolding of a relationship. It might have, you can say, messed it up for the time being, but that doesn't mean that it's finite, like it's a finite amount, like it's done for good. I don't believe in that. I don't think that way. So yeah, maybe messed up for the time being, but I mean, things can always turn around and be revised. And I mean, the miraculous can always happen, as we've heard in different examples in whether it's our own life or other people's stories, etc. But yeah, I would just say that this goes back to what we said earlier, gray areas. Get comfortable in the gray areas and not having to control everything, because people who are black and white, those are the people that tend to control and need to control. And so, yeah.
And, having it go full circle, we all have aspects or parts of us that are black and white. You know what I mean? Like they're actually useful parts, but we don't want to become too dependent on them, especially in relationships. Something you could do here is just become clean with the partner, or the former partner, and just say, this is what I did. I really liked you or loved you, use whatever language you want. And like, I feel like I've screwed this up. I want to let you know this has nothing to do with you. It has to do with me. And I'm really sorry. You could always do obviously something like that. Like Marvin said, doesn't mean the relationship's over just because this happened. Long-term, it could be a good thing. But yeah, I think a discussion has to be had with the other person. Thank you for that. This call is pure gold. I wish I had money for first year coaching. This is worth mentioning. I mean, the reason initially Marvin and I, when we threw out this idea to each other like a month or two ago, we were only going to do very immersive tier 1 coaching. And we decided, because we know our communities and people on YouTube, that we wanted to work with as many people as we could who were interested. So, tier 2, tier 3, you're going to get, we wouldn't offer them if we weren't confident that you're really going to see substantive change by taking part in any of the coaching we offer. If it's group coaching once a week, if it's tier 2 where it's group coaching and you meet with us a couple times a month, you're going to get something great out of it.
If you stay.
Yeah, it's not right. It's not a 2-week thing, right? It's not a 2-week.
It's not a 2-week thing, because Tim and I, what we found is 6 months to a year is typically a good base to start for most people to actually see substantial results that last. But what most people do is they go to a coach. One session, to be frank, most of you in here, one session isn't going to solve your problems. One session isn't going to get rid of, whatever you're going through. 2 sessions isn't probably, even a month of doing this stuff. Most of you guys need multiple months, 6 months to a year at least, if not longer, to really see results. I just wanted to throw it in there, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad you said that. Yeah, and it's, we were initially going to have people say you have to commit to it or whatever. We're not doing that anymore. We're just letting people do it for as long as they want to do it. We're making it very open. And if most people on this call probably are at least a little familiar with our advice. You always hear Marvin and I say this is a long-term thing. And yeah, and if you do even just group coaching once a week, I think, for the majority of you on this call, if you do that, you're going to be pleasantly surprised 4 or 5 months down the line, I should say, about how different you feel about your relationship status and what you're going through. Because weekly check-ins like this, I mean, the conversations we've just had over the last 90 minutes, where else are people having these conversations? Especially on social media and the law of assumption community. I know of no other places. There might be some, and by all means, let us know. We want to know. We're all for real SP coaching. We want other people to be doing this besides us just coaching SP issues in this way, but there's not a lot of it. So we hope to foster a real small community that can support each other over the long term. We're not looking for quick fixes. We're looking for permanent change. And that's what we're going to do our best to give you. Thank you, Sheena, for that. YouTube, the Living Joyfully podcast. We'll have to check that out. Yeah, just to follow up, I found that by communicating this issue, became a little more positive again. Yeah, communication is huge. My sense of control really pushed them away, but I apologize. And it's improved things and allowed the possibility of restoring the connection. Exactly. And again, this is just good common sense, golden rule type of application, right? Communicate better, get better results in your relationship, generally speaking. Question, so we could jump into the program for a month in the near future just to try it out. My main issue is getting the money, so I can't commit right away. Yeah, you could just contact us. Like I said, the first step is fill out the questionnaire. We'll get in touch with you and you can go over your situation. And yeah, I mean, if whether it's this month or later, that is fine. You know, we don't want people to feel like they're forced into it at any time. But at the same time, understand we don't do quick fixes. We do long-term fixes. That's what the whole goal of this this new coaching program is. What type of situation do you feel like you can't help with? Real trauma-based stuff that's very trauma-based is that's just something that pops off the top of my head. Like that's something that, you know, you're going to want to be dealing with a therapist or other, you know, licensed medical psychologists and psychiatrists that Marv and I just frankly don't. Not only are we not qualified to do it, but we don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Just to be frank, there's plenty of other situations we can't help you with. We just need, it's a case by case thing. Most people in the SP community, we can help in some way, but not everybody. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Yeah, fill out the questionnaire if you haven't already. We can be reached at our emails. All that information will be below. And thank you so much for joining live. If you join live, we always, great interaction today. This was awesome, making, I think, both of us even more excited for group coaching starting next week, because you can really see the potential. Again, so many commonalities, and you realize, oh man, like, you know, everyone's going through this, like like Marvin and Tim are going through this too, like these, like all the gray and stuff like that. You know, it's so good to recognize this. And it helps heal us, and it sorts out our relationships in a lot of ways. So yeah, Marvin, any parting words?
No, sir. Thank everybody.
Awesome. All right. Until next time, everybody, just drop us a line if you have questions. All right. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.